money will never be enough. For instance, if you take TUT as a university and we check how much we are charging our students to actually pay for their tuition, we are the lowest paying university in the country. So the 8% for us will make a difference. It's better than nothing. And we believe the government have gone a step further to assist us in this regard, to say to us, for the missing middle, they are going to be covered. As I can tell you now, most of our students are actually living on NSFAS. So the missing middle will add into what we are actually supposed to receive. So we need this little money that we need in order to actually buy equipment for our laboratories. For engineering, as you know, it's an intensive training program. So we need money to do that. If we check our exchange rate with the dollar, it's quite low. So the little that we have, you have to actually consider that now we are going to import these equipment from abroad, which actually cost us an arm and a leg.
Now, the government has several options. It could implement a fees must fall levy across the tax base. Taxing big business could help varsities to meet the free education call. Students could repay loans in the future, or the government could impose a tax on graduates. The government also needs to ensure repayment of outstanding NSFAS loans that are totaling 21 billion rand. Lastly, the government departments could cut wasteful expenditure to fund the free education call. And the question we're asking today, are students, higher education students, have a sense of entitlement when it comes to free education? Is it feasible? Can it be done? Joining the conversation, you can give us a call. The number is at the bottom of your screen. We have also opened our phone lines. You can tweet us at ANN7TV and tell us what your views are. In the meantime, let me take this opportunity to introduce to you the guests that I have in studio with me that will be helping us analyze the feasibility of free higher education. I have Professor Stanley Mukola, he's the Vice Chancellor at UCT. Also joining us in studio is Stembiso Ndlovu. He is the Secretary General of the South African Union of Students. And we also have Tsepo Moloi, who is the Chairperson of Postgraduates Association at the University of Johannesburg. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us and spending this opportunity with us. I understand we'll also be joined by an education expert, that's Graham Block, and also on the phone line, I think we'll have Mary De Haas from the Violence and Human Rights Monitor and Research Fellow School of Law at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Now, let's put things into perspective, gentlemen. I'll start with you, Professor. What goes into running a university? And I ask this question because I'm trying to bring into context the issue of outsourcing. It has been a multifaceted conversation, hasn't it? It's not just about having free education. Those elements come into play. Now that we know this outsourcing, which the students are demanding, is it visible for us to have free education?
Thank you very much, Audrey. Thank you all to our viewers out there. Maybe let me make a correction before I can proceed. I'm the Deputy Vice Chancellor teaching and learning at TUT, not UCT. Okay. I'm here in Pretoria. Yes, indeed, education requires resources, money to run it. As I said yesterday in the studio that now, for us like TUT, who admit students from a very poor background, who we know most of them cannot even pay to study at the university, we welcome the minister's statement because now we believe 80% of our students will be able to be covered by this gesture. For university to be successful in running, we need a lot of money because if you run a program like engineering, you will require intensive equipment to really assist in the training of our students. You need to pay for services to run the university. You need to pay for consumables because our students, what they do in the university is actually they do the practical work. And for that to happen, you need resources. So without any money, we are not able to succeed in the university, particularly to provide quality education.
All right, Stembi, so do you think students have an understanding of the economics that come with a free education?
No. I think that our students fully understand what is at stake here. I think our only problem in South Africa now is those who want to gamble with the future of our child for their only petty and narrow political interest. I think it's a matter of us as the union and all progressive forces in the higher education sector to go down to our students and be able to explain to them what the minister has pronounced yesterday. But now we find a situation wherein there are many people who want to use the pronouncements of the minister yesterday for their own self-shift political gain, because throughout the year, post our first National Executive Committee meeting, we have maintained as the union with all the SRSs that We are promoting free quality education for the poor and the missing middle. And the minister has exactly pronounced what we have initially pronounced as the union. And then now you find people who say that there must be a moratorium in the higher education sector. It is not possible that the rich must continue to be subsidized by the government. The rich, they can afford, they must be allowed to pay. We can't always subsidize people who can pay for education.
But who's vetting this process? Let's bring in the conversation. Tsepo Mloyi is the chairperson of the Postgraduates Association of the University of Johannesburg. Are we commodifying education, or should it just be free for all, regardless of whether you can afford it or not? Because it appears this is the argument that we're getting from students, that education should be free for all, regardless of whether you can afford it, or if you fall in the middle class, or if you fall into the poor students.
Thank you very much. Greetings to viewers at home. So just earlier, we need to kind of contextualize where we're coming from in this dialogue. I think there's a lot of emphasis, which is worrisome, on the economics and the finance. And we're actually missing what the submissions that came from students in October 2015 was to the respective institutions. So the first one we need to emphasize is a quality decolonized education. Right? The second one, you said outsourcing. It's actually insourcing. That we want the workers to be in a position where everything that's been happening up to date in terms of them being contracted workers must end. Right? So it's the insourcing. And then the third one is the money, which is basically fees must fall. Right? So 0%. It's an oxymoron that we speak about 0% increase, because this is the pronouncement that was made by the Honorable President in Pretoria. I mean, zero and increase in one sentence. I mean, this is the greatest, confusion. Where we, I think, as student leaders are finding ourselves in, we're finding ourselves in a space where we've heard the judgment yesterday from the minister, and if we are to be honest, we did kind of anticipate that it's not going to be a pronouncement which is going to say 0%. I mean, we've looked at the tensions that are playing themselves between the two committees, the presidential commission that has been set up, plus the ministerial committee that was looking at the issue.
Right.
We also saw, students actually going to the fees commission in the town hall in Fort Hare, where they actually disbanded it and said, look, how do you continue with this conversation while you have students that are interdicted, students that are suspended, and you are continuing as if we are only talking about economics. We are talking about so many other things here, and you only want to focus on the money. So the money is important, nobody's downplaying this. But we must also talk about all these others. If you look now at all the visuals, most of the student leaders that are coming to the fore are not the student leaders you saw last year. So again, it's speaking volumes to, if you're reading what they're saying now is as part of their demands. Let's begin with first talking about the students that are suspended. And this is what you're seeing at UCT with them requesting for the TRC of Sharpeville.
Right.
This is what, again, you're seeing.
Professor Stanley, is this all smoke and mirrors? I mean, you insist, as a Vice-Chancellor, that it is important that you have some kind of increment when it comes to university fees. And then we have a study that shows that there are other ways of subsidizing for the students who can't afford. Are you really trying hard enough? I mean, this is what Stembiso here is saying, that, look, we know that this is something that can happen. Why is it not happening? Why are you giving us excuses?
No, we're trying hard. I will share with you the experience that I had from TUT. We say government alone cannot afford to fund higher education. We as a university must come with other means to try and actually assist our young students to study. For instance, we have established a TUT, a Bursary Scholarship Fund, where the working class, our lecturers, our staff are contributing monthly into this fund. The main idea is to simply say to the poor students who are capable academically and very poor, to be able to be financed that they can continue their study. We're also going flat out to say to the industry, please come on board. Assist us with finances that now we can educate these young people who must come back and work for you as an industry, because without the knowledge that we require as a country, our economy will not grow anywhere.
Right, the big businesses are actually benefiting
from the student that
we have
produce.
opened our phone lines.
Yeah.
I understand we have David from Pretoria on the line. Very good evening to you, David. What is your contribution to the conversation?
Ma'am, my contribution is that the fees that these guys are calling for free education is not feasible under the current economic conditions. What we need to ask ourselves as a country, we need to ask how much money do all these students need to go to varsity for 3 years. Then from there we can start to have this kind of conversation. We can't have this kind of conversation without knowing the actual cost of studying. And basically my last point is that there is no free lunch in the world. The student representative must tell us where do they benchmark this free education for all. Thank you.
David, thank you for your call. I understand we have Mr. Graham Block, is an education expert. Mr. Block, thank you for joining us this evening. Your thoughts on these conversations that we're having? Students saying that it is feasible. There are solutions that they're bringing up to the table that can subsidize for free education. And we have on the other side university management saying, look, we cannot do with free education. What are your thoughts and your expertise?
Look, I think we can fund free education, but we need to say that government should lead society and have the conversation with students. And maybe students, I mean poor students especially, we need their skills and their contribution to society.
What do you think of the idea of implementing a fees must fall project?
Look, I think that it needs to be calm, and many students are differ on ideas, but the main thing is the call for free education is feasible, as Israel Mpofu Walsh has shown in his book. It's a myth to say that it can't be funded. But the universities need money, I think, at present, and subsidies. As they say, they need 8%. I think it's reasonable. But I think Blade should be more on message and more active, because he needs to find the money to fund free education.
Right, Mr. Block, thank you for your analysis. There we have Mary De Haas. She's from the Violence and Human Rights Monitor, as well as a research fellow at the School of Law at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Mary, thank you for joining us in the conversation. We have seen the relationship between students and police, especially earlier today at Wits University, violence happening there. It seems to be escalating. How does this exacerbate the situation of a already volatile situation that needs to be treated with the utmost sensitivity?
Good evening, everybody. I mean, violence just breeds violence. Look, I mean, the point is that any protest tends to get out of hand. Look, there's a lot of unanswered questions for me, and I'm talking now about KwaZulu-Natal and the incidents at the university there. I mean, the police arrest people, but there's no substance in the arrests. They're not protecting property, and we're talking now police and private security. There seems to be no strategy to protect property. I think it's part of the problem of police not being properly trained, even 4 years after Marikana, to do proper public order policing. But you also have the private security factor, and the students have very real complaints about being roughed up by police or security, about being arrested when they were not part of the problems. There's no information about who's actually burning the library or other property. So somewhere along the line, the security arrangements on campus raise a lot of very serious questions, and it's the students need answers and the general public need answers. At the same time, there's also, in this province, in KZN at the university, there are allegations that some of the troublemakers are not students. We had this in the 90s where you have people squatting in residences, people with nothing to lose because perhaps they've been excluded from university study because of poor performance, criminality from some of the areas in town, being part of the problem. I believe young people, students historically have been at the forefront of protest, but I think it calls for students themselves to, if they organize protests, to delegate other students to be on the lookout for troublemakers, to defend the university property, because basically if you burn a library, it's the students who suffer. I keep asking myself, look, it's not the students who benefit from what's going on, so who the heck is stirring the pot? So I think, and I say this to other people doing protests, historically people have organized, for example, marshals, monitors for marches. And the university, I think, needs to get its act together too, and to make sure that security arrangements don't abuse people, that they protect people, protect property, and basically communicate with students. Because a lot of the protest seems to be about lack of communication, and you've got at tertiary institutions, you've got whole superstructure, you might say, of people who are supposed to help students. And this is just what I'm picking up from what students say and what I read in the media, that there really isn't enough dialogue over issues such as the ones you're discussing tonight.
Right, so
and
essentially communication
security.
structures need to be in place, and there's also an element of criminality, miscreants that are hijacking this protest. I understand we have another caller on the line from Klerksdorp. Please do tell us what your thoughts are on this topic.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Yes. This government is a government of people. They must listen to the people. And what I'm saying, as long the economy is still in the hands of the minority, we'll never get it right this thing. Thank you.
Thank you for your thoughts. And it brings me to my next question. I'll pose it to you, Professor Stanley. The possibility of imposing tax across all boards, just to make sure that there's funding for these free university fees. What are your thoughts on that?
For me, we need to really conduct a thorough analysis and investigation to see the feasibility of imposing the tax, because already our people are heavily taxed, as we can know in the country. So the task team that the president actually put in place, I think, need to go out and investigate thoroughly and make sure that now, whatever order they cannot bring on board, will be able to actually cover our people. Because I'm afraid to simply say, let's go and impose the tax, will be adding a burden already on the people who are really already in serious trouble, debt-wise.
But when it comes to the big businesses, Professor, that you mentioned earlier, that are benefiting from these graduates, surely they should be able to contribute to this.
I agree. With the big business, I support it 100%, but I'm just trying to avoid where we can say the individual must actually be burdened again with the tax. The big, they're actually benefiting from our country, natural resources that they actually derive. If they can actually afford to really assist us in paying a tax to assist our young people, give our young people some bursaries to come to the university, like I said earlier on. At the end, they benefit from these people who are graduating from us to come and work for them. So I support it that indeed we need to together come with the mechanism to make sure that now we get enough money from every area that can assist our people to get educated.
Stembe, so there's two sides of the coin to this issue. NSFAS has been doing a lot to fund students, but reports show that there's 48% of students that don't actually graduate on time. So this means it falls back on NSFAS to keep on funding the students who are really having several first years. They could come to WITS, they could go to UCT and continue having their first years. Don't you think that needs to be looked at as well, and make sure that there is a clever funding, so to speak?
I think that also it must not only be blamed to students, it must also be the level of qualification of lecturers that universities employ. Because I'll make a typical example of some of the universities that we're aware of, whereby a BTech, a national diploma student is lecturing BTech students. just because he's a favorite of that certain HOD in that department. Then you can also balance that. What kind of graduate are going to promote in that institution? Therefore, what we need to do is that we need to monitor the quality of education that we provide in our institution of higher learning. It might not be our responsibility, but as students, we'll be able to intervene and ensure that we're able to have proper quality education. Because if you take a student mentors that they come from undergraduates, mentoring first year or second years on their third level, is one of the most excelling students in that kind of a level and in that particular subject. And part of our mentors in our universities is those who graduate with cum laude, those they come from the side of students. But then we must check from the side of what the university offers to the students. It's quite different. So we need to have a proper monitoring system of how we balance the education system in our universities. Second to that, I would want to enter on this issue of fees. It becomes problematic that there is an assertion in this country in general that fees did not increase last year. That's totally wrong. Fees increased last year. It's just that they were subsidized by government. And that is the very same thing that is happening this year. It's just that this year the government has also included the missing middle, of which was our Clarion College students throughout the year, that the missing middle must be taken care of, and government has intervened. So that we're able to diffuse this mentality of saying that this is a new model and so on and so forth. Second to that is that the violence that you see in universities, I will tell you for a fact, universities is not a parking lot of police. We condemn the presence of police in our universities when our students are protesting, even if the violence is peaceful. For example, today I went to VETS. Students were marching peacefully, but the presence of police that decided to shoot them when they were just marching peacefully is what erupted this thing. Why do you bring bouncers if you don't have money? Because bouncers per hour, they charge more than 500. But university will come and tell us that they don't have money, but they bring a plus or minus 100 bouncers in our universities. In as much we are anti any violent protest, but we must condemn university managers from bringing bouncers when there is no need or necessity to bring them in our universities. These are students that are in universities. These are intellectuals. These are the future of this country.
So, Stambi, so essentially what you're saying is the government has been able to subsidize at some point, so it can be done more. We'll come back to that point. Also, government coffers and how we've seen irregular expenditure. We've seen the Auditor General's report saying there's a lot of money that is being wasted in the government, especially in municipalities. We'll come back to that point. For now, we have to take a caller. I understand we have Giovanni on the phone line. Please go ahead with your point.
Hello, May. How are you?
Yes, sir. What are your thoughts?
Khojani Madib.
Khojani, welcome to the show.
Look, a lot has been said. Every South African, all of us, we support education. We support free education. But I want to ask those two gentlemen there, when they are saying the police must not be there, the bouncers must not be there, you know, I pay a lot of tax. Every time when I look at my pay slip, there's a lot of tax that is deducted from my salary. I do not want that tax to go back and rebuild the schools which they are vandalizing. This same tax that I am paying, it must rather go and pay the fees that they are fighting for, not rebuilding the auditorium, rebuilding the schools. They must think carefully that this very same tax that we are paying, it must not go and rebuild the schools that they are vandalizing. It must go and pay the fees.
Absolutely, Khojani. Thank you for your point. Tsepo, do you think students understand that burning buildings will not bring about free education? If anything, it will make things worse. But we've seen that happening, haven't we? From last year, the protests that happened. Even this year, police presence has had to be increased just to make sure that there's no property that is destroyed. Isn't that taking us a step back?
So your previous caller spoke to the sentence of violence begets violence. So I don't think that our students necessarily are violent towards property of the institutions until they are provoked to be violent. We have to also understand the anxiety levels that are at play. If you are saying that, look, we've been saying this matter to you guys, you've not been hearing us, you don't give us the attention we're seeking, naturally, we should then understand that there is going to be communication breakdown and there's going to be consequences. However, I think as student leaders, we find ourselves in situations where while we have to condone violent behavior, and misconduct, and vandalization of any kind from our student body, we also need to say to management that, but don't also encourage it. because what then happens is your failure of hearing them out is leading to that type of outcome. However, in saying that, I must also say that I don't think what we saw last year and what we're beginning to see now, coming from the Wits campus, from UCT, police arresting students without any charge, police coming and manhandling. It doesn't matter whether you're a female, whether you're a mother, whether you're a female student. And we are hearing our students now raising these concerns that, is it because management does not think we're worth anything?
Right, so there's a reaction to every action. I want to bring back Mary de Haas into the conversation. Mary, Stembiso here says that, oh, well, Mary seems to have left us. That's fine. I want to bring the issue of bursaries, gentlemen. I don't know if you have noticed that most of the students that seem to get these bursaries, which could be another form of funding education, seem to be students that come from affluent families that can afford this, private schools that offer great education, and therefore you automatically qualify for a bursary. Isn't there another way that we can look at the recourse of dispersing this bursaries?
I agree with you. We actually have an experience where very rich people actually come and rob the system and enter the system of getting university bursaries. And we are appealing to government to assist us through SARS to vet these people who actually apply for these NSFAS and the bursary that we actually can offer, to make sure that now people who actually come into the system are those who are actually in need and academically deserving. Because the way things are done now, you find that a person can receive money from, when you come to university, you simply put it in the pocket and apply for NSFAS. And we simply say, go and look for an affidavit. They go to the police station, they come back and hand the certificate without verifying where this person is coming from, the background, the parents who are either working. And actually, some of them have got even businesses, but their kids are actually robbing the system by getting into NSFAS. It's unfortunate. I really, for where I'm sitting, and say, I appeal to government to make sure that now we put the system together to say whoever applies for NSFAS, we vet the parents and make sure.
Tsepo is itching to say something.
I'm worried the Honorable Deputy Vice Rector is not answering the issue of bursaries. NSFAS is a loan, okay? It's not a bursary. Let's talk to bursaries, and let's talk to what you are raising. The bursaries come with conditions that students must perform. Students must meet a particular criteria in order for them to then, because the bursary is in essence a scholarship.
Yeah, let me clarify my point, what I was trying to say, Tsepo.
Okay.
I understand that a bursary comes with some kind of a performance. It comes with excellence.
Right.
But can it also be in the framework of need? Can we merge those two together?
Okay, so, when you start speaking that language, I'm taken to what we did at UJ this year with our management coming up with what is called a UJ Trust Fund. So our students who basically did not meet the criteria for what you now would call your middle students. What they did was they came up with a trust fund and they said, okay, fair enough, you guys don't afford, and again, you're not performing. What we're going to do is we're going to give you this lifeline of, we're going to take care of your registration, however then, with the view that you guys at least need to then perform. So that's a model. It's call it an experimentary all you like, but at least it's something that they're trying to come up with. But that's very recent. I want to talk to the bursaries that are available in the bursary and the finance departments of the institutions. The first problem you have is most of the students don't apply. So we need to look at this wholesomely. It's not just a one-way street where, the university is not doing its part. That's but in saying that, though, those that do apply, the issues that they have to contend with are more than what they, could deal with. For example, I'm a black student. I'm applying for a bursary. I can't access my marks. Part of the prerequisites require that. I still owe fees. So what must happen now?
Right, so do away with registration. That's one of the demands that we've been getting from students. But does that really help? We'll get students who do not qualify to be studying for a certain degree, and half the time they don't get to graduate, and that's a waste of funding as well. Stembiso, I can see you have a point that you want to raise. I'll ask you to hold on to that. Let's cross live to our reporter, Nomusa Pungula, who is on standby at Wits University, where I understand that students have decided to sleep outside tonight as part of their protest. Nomusa, are you with us?
Yes, Audrey, indeed. I am still here at the Wits University, where students have decided to embark on a night vigil, saying that they are not going to go anywhere until they have finalized a plan of action, which is going to give them a direction as to what are they going to do moving forward. They have pleaded earlier on with the public to assist in terms of dinner as well as water and other necessities that they might need. But we saw them now later on walking in with food parcel. When we tried to find out where exactly they got those food parcel, some of them mentioned that the cafeteria provided them with dinner, which they are very much grateful for. They are going to meet inside the Great Hall. They are going to meet at the Solomon Mahlangu House and plan properly and thoroughly as to what is going to happen tomorrow. Currently, they are busy mobilizing other students to come and join them for the mass meeting that they are going to have, because they are saying that at the end of the day, they want no fee increment. They want the fees to fall, because it is possible to have no-fee universities in South Africa. So they are going to be staying the whole night preparing for tomorrow, making sure that they know what to do moving forward, Audrey.
Nomusa, I'll ask you to be on standby there as I bring the conversation back into studio. Gentlemen, you can see the resolve that we're seeing from students across the board. Wits University students are holding a night vigil just to make sure that their points are heard. What kind of conversations do we need to be having? Do you think this is a national conversation, or should it just be concentrated on the stakeholders to make sure that it is not diluted? Stembisa, sorry, you wanted to say something?
Thank you. I think that we cannot term it as a national conversation, because I think it's only happening in Wits for now. It might escalate to other universities, who knows? I'm not a prophet of doom, by the way. But what I will say is that we need to have a conscious country, a country that understands its own socio-economic realities of what the country is faced with and how should the country resolve what is faced with. But the struggle of Wits, I doubt that they are so different to the struggle that your WUSU, your University of KwaZulu-Natal, University of Fort Hare, they've been facing for the past 10 years. They are not that different. The problem is that in Wits...
And explain to us those differences that you mean.
It's the problem that in Wits is where white monopoly capital has invested the most. Because look now, this struggle, because my worry also comes and say this struggle of fees must fall started last year, which is fallacy, is the propaganda of the media. It has always happening, Prof. Mkola and TUT. TUT has always been striking against fee increment, University of KwaZulu-Natal, all the historically black universities. Just that, yes, last year it hit hard where white monopoly capital is investing. That's when it got popularity and it was termed fees must fall. In fact, to us, more especially those who come from historically black institutions, we are always terming it fee increment. That's what it is to us. And we as students from poor universities, we understand what the government has intervened. What is needed here is that we need to combine these students, these two different structures of students, students from historically black institutions and students from white privileged universities, to have a dialogue and try to share our views, because here there is a total intervention of government. Hence the union that I'm from has made a vow that on the 14th of October, we're going to be leading a march to white monopoly capital, to Chamber of Mines, to say Chamber of Mines, Johannesburg Stock Exchange, contribute to the education system of the country, because we are part of the major beneficiaries of this higher education system of the country, but you are not contributing anything. There is an argument that if fees increase and only those who are using bursaries are going to pull out. That's fallacy. Let us not be prophets to say that if we increase fees for only private sector, the private sector will reduce the amount of bursaries that they are giving to students. Let us not be prophets. Let us work with what government is doing.
Okay, let's hold on to your non-prophecy conversation. Let's just play this insert. Where meanwhile, the National Treasury faces the tough task of funding a looming university shortfall for the year 2017. Now, this comes after the Higher Education Minister, Blade Nzimande, yesterday announced subsidizing 2017 fee hikes for the poor, the working class, and the missing passing medal students. The National Treasury says that it is exploring different mechanisms of finding the money to pay for the subsidy. It has also warned that in the present constrained fiscal environment, those who can afford to pay do so to enable the state to support the ever-increasing numbers of those who deserve support and cannot afford. Now, the Higher Education Department estimates that Treasury would have to find about 2.6 billion rand to fund the shortfall. Right, gentlemen, the Treasury is obviously not, on the side of this fees must fall. They're saying they're struggling financially at the moment, and they're looking for different ways to make sure that they can subsidize the situation. Yes, Stembi, so you can finish your thought.
No, these ones of Treasury. These ones of Treasury must not play with us here. Most of the student movements in the country, they've always advised Treasury to introduce what we call progressive taxation. Tax the rich, fund free education. Through sin tax, deduct some percentage, fund education system of the country. They've been reluctant to listen to students. Now they can't come here with an argument that they cannot fund this thing of free education, because students have always contributed immensely to this discussion that Minister Pravin Gordhan is raising today. Minister Pravin Gordhan must go and refer to what student movements have always maintained of progressive taxation in terms of sin tax, also deduct a certain percentage, contribute to education system. 2011, I think the Secretary General, who was the Secretary of SASCO, which is Comrade Lazolanda Mas, if I'm not mistaken, said tax the rich, tax those who even have audacity to eat sushi on top of naked women. They must be taxed because they have enough money such that they drink expensive moe, they drink expensive beer, they drink expensive champagne. Tax that champagne.
Right, I think we know exactly who you're talking about at this moment. We have a caller. Just a quick reminder to our viewers, our phone lines are open. The details are at the bottom of your screen. Go ahead and give us a call. George from Pretoria is on the line. George, good evening to you. Thank you for joining us. Your thoughts?
Yes, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Please go ahead.
All right. Listen, I think most people are getting this wrong, or perhaps even the minister is getting it wrong. Because now people are saying, now we are fighting. Look, I'm being financed by NSFAS, but now the challenge is, NSFAS is not a bazaar. In a way, I'm still going to pay that back. And the challenges are that it might come to a time whereby I've got a job, but I will still struggle to fund my children's education because I'll be busy paying back the NSFAS fund. Now, we are not just fighting to say, let this be done today, but I've also got I've got a 10-year-old now. By the time I start working and earning a stable income, chances are that money would be taken from my salary to pay the bursary that I'm studying, the NSFAS that I'm studying today. So now I'm not fighting for a child of a CEO, and I understand the fact that we cannot be subsidized as the same as the child of a CEO as the child of a cleaner. But now the challenge goes to the point that this is not a bazaar. I'm still going to pay this. And if you say I shouldn't fight because now I'm fighting for a child of a CEO or of a banker, no. I want free education, that is all. I need not to pay for education.
George, thank you for your call and for your thoughts. Yes, Tsepo. NSFAS is not it's not a bursary. People need to pay it back. Also, just very important, if you can give us your thoughts on the Treasury and all these ways that they're coming up with to try and source this funding for the free education.
Okay, let's just take it back a bit. My leader here, it's very important that we note that he comes from SAUS and SRC is basically under them. When you ask us the question, what's the way forward? My response would be, I want more of them to be more at the forefront. Because right now, I think the concern throughout the universities is the presence of SAUS is not as felt as it should be. So for me, this is what I would like to see, because we're having a lot of people who are coming from every direction, and you do not know who to talk to, who are you listening to, who should you take seriously. So that's my first take on the way forward.
Okay, leadership within the students, very important.
Yeah, on Treasury, look, I stand with my leader's position here. What they've just said now is really playing marbles with students. They are fully aware of the issues. They know this whole this idea of a tax levy is not something that we should be entertaining at any level. Okay, though I do want to say we need, however, to be invited to a dialogue where we can actually look at the alternatives. So we're not saying, look, we're shooting all these things down and we don't want to rationalize. You know, we're rejecting, yes, but I think in our rejection, we're also saying, hear us out on what our alternative is. And I think, and this is why I'm saying, if they, as South, as our leaders, because we are under them essentially, if they can champion that, and I think they need to do it urgently. Already at Wits, I think I would be happy if they begin there, and then they go to the other institutions, UCT and the likes. But again, let's not underplay what he's raising about Venda, Zululand, Fort Hare, Wusu, because somehow in our dialogue, they don't exist. And it is very true what he's saying. They've been striking every year without fail. But it has never made the headlines that suddenly...
Right, so the struggle has been going on for a while now. Yeah. Professor Stanley, Treasury says they're looking at ways. What are your thoughts? Are you in line with their thinking? Do you think it is feasible, all these options that they're coming up with?
Indeed, they need to look into ways of raising funds in order to fund for the needy students. We must also take into account that now government is faced with a lot of priorities. We have got a health system that we need to fund in order to keep our country going, because if you have got sick society, economy will suffer because people will not be working. So I really want to say that the government is trying its best to make sure that now our young people get educated. We just have to support them, because what I've picked up in the whole system here, this announcement by the minister was not well communicated. People are arguing that now they are not going to be assisted, while the minister has actually raised the bar to say the missing need is going to be covered by this funding. This was said earlier on. For me, where I'm coming from, almost 80% of my students will be covered by this. So we just say to say, government, let's try and go full-fledged and raise funds in order to make sure that now our young people who are academically good get assisted. These people are actually looking also into basic education, the TVETs. All these people need money to be educated. So I really want to support our government to say, together, let's see how best we can fund our young people to go to university.
And the Treasury says that they're appealing to the moral fiber of the community, of for those young students who actually can afford to pay for their own fees. Do you think we have that maturity as a community, as a nation, to say, look, I don't need to be applying for NSFAS funding. I'm okay. My parents can afford this, and okay. Let's try and answer that first.
We need to have responsible citizens. We need to have patriotic citizens, those who care for the future of this country. And those who care mostly for the future of this country will not kill their conscience and lie and say they can't afford. Because it's not about them. It's about building a united and non-racial and democratic and
Let's hear what this caller has to say. We have Alistair from KwaZulu-Natal. Alistair, thank you for joining us. What are your thoughts?
Hi, good evening.
Yes, please go ahead.
I had to agree with an earlier caller who's a taxpayer and I totally stand by him shoulder to shoulder when I see our universities being attacked, and these beautiful old institutions are now going up in flames. I certainly would not want my tax money going in there and repaying that, and I'll be the first person to say no more, not in my name. If there's a fury, it must be directed at the government, who waste billions on SAA and ESCOM and ETC. They could easily, through rooting out corruption, fund free education. So I cannot see why the short-sightedness of the students, stroke thugs, trying to attack the universities and burning them, and, when their anger is misdirected, it should be directed at the government, and they should be taking the money that they squander in the billions yearly to fund them. They've got enough money. It's a simple process, and I hope that our political climate in this country gets to a stage where it's mature enough, and we get a government in that understands that corruption is to the detriment of all. And if we had very little corruption in this country, I'm telling you now, we could easily fund these students.
Alistair, thank you for your thoughts. There's a caller there saying that he's not willing to pay his tax money to students that are going to be destroying buildings. Also, the buck stops with the government. They can find a way if they root out corruption, if they stop irregular expenditure. This can be done. Yes, Stembis.
You see, I think I must say that we have a lot of callers who are white monopoly capital apologists. How do we fight a government that has tried so hard to contribute to this education crisis? These callers who are calling, they are white monopoly apologists, and they might be beneficiaries of white monopoly capital, and their sons and daughters might be beneficiaries of the NSFAS government intervention. That hall where students of VETS are being assaulted there, they've always used that hall for their peaceful interaction. Why they were stopped today to enter that hall? Since when did the Old University of Students of VETS vandalize that hall historically? That's what you call Solomon Mahlangu Hall, where they always meet. Why do you today bring bouncers while for the all past years of protest, they have never damaged that hall? Why do you bring bouncers today to stop them from accessing their own premises?
Right, but you and the caller actually have one thing in common where you do agree that the government can actually subsidize if they come up with solutions because they have the capacity to do so. So you have that one thing in common. I'll ask you to hold on to that. We have Kanisile from Pretoria. Yes, please go ahead with your thoughts.
Yes, the state was actually briefed about transfer pricing and how much money we're actually losing through transfer pricing. And this transfer pricing happens in the context of our government agreeing to the World Bank to implement policies that allow white monopoly capital to continue to benefit from the structures of colonialism. What is being done to stop transfer pricing? Also, I would like to ask, what are universities doing in their economics departments to actually study how they can how free education can be funded by the state? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your thoughts there. That's our caller from Pretoria. I'll pose this question to you, Professor. As a university, your economic department, how are you going to try and assist the situation?
In fact, I can share with you that now some of our professors are really hard at work trying to investigate and do research on the feasibility of free education. This is in a way to try and come with the mechanism, looking into other countries around us to say, how did they manage where they've got free education to go this route? So our researchers, our professors are doing this job in order to assist our government. So we are quite pleased with because now they see the need to assist our people.
How long does this take? I'm sure we have been having this problem for a while now, Professor. You say you have people, in your system that are looking at this.
We are a new democracy. My university is hardly 11 years old, and I can tell you the output that we are seeing today of some of the research really have made a huge difference. We believe with this thing of free education, if properly researched, trying to actually benchmark around the world, we'll be able to come with a solution to assist our government.
Right, very quickly, gentlemen, final thoughts. Tsepo, very quickly, in 30 seconds. We're running out of time.
Okay, so firstly, we can only reiterate what the students are saying on the ground. Unfortunately, we cannot come out here and say our own positions. Students are saying fees must fall. We are now already at a first phase of seeing a lot of damage taking place. We need to quickly show leadership from all the student structures that are in positions which are mandated to do this. And we also need to be able to get into a position where anxiety aside, emotions aside, we need to be able to come to a platform where we can hear management out, government out, and also students out, so that everybody will feel that there's no high priest.
Right, and everybody can hear each other so we can come up with a solution. Step is very quickly, your final thoughts.
My view is that the voice of the student should be the reigning voice in this country. And whosoever dare not listen to students is bound to suffer the consequences of what students will be able to embark on the following day.
Right.
Therefore, but in short, we welcome the pronouncements of the minister. We view them as a progressive resolution towards the attainment of free education in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The resolve there of the students, as you can hear it from STEMPI. So thank you so much for joining us. This was AN 7 Prime Time. It's time for us to take a very short break. Do stay with us. We'll be back in a moment with Best Sense.